Throughout all of NBA history, only 3 players have ever started a season averaging at least 34 points and 10 assists over their first 5 games. Tiny Archibald became the first to do so in 1972. Russell Westbrook joined him at the beginning of his MVP campaign, and Austin Reaves just made the cut about a week ago. With LeBron starting the season on the sideline and Luka missing a few games, Reaves was forced into a first option role, and he responded with consecutive performances of 51 points and 9 assists, 41 points on 59% shooting, then 28 points and 16 assists, as he led a blistering hot Lakers offense to 2 wins. The thing is, this isn't exactly a new trend. Going back to the beginning of last season, he's played 7 games without either one of LeBron or Luka, to which he's averaged 35 points and 10 assists on about 67% true shooting. We're starting to see that when Reaves is tasked with the duties of a lead ball handler, he isn't just capable, he excels. But is this performance sustainable, or is it just a blip in a small sample of games? Does he have the skill set to be a legitimate number 1 option, and what does that mean for the Lakers moving forward? Whenever Reaves is the number 1 option on offense, the ball is in his hands a lot. Some of that is a result of LA not having a ton of ball handlers, but it's also a function of how reliable he's been at pressuring defenses and making the right decisions. When he's initiating, he's looking to get downhill as much as possible, and that's been on full display to start the season, as he's one of only 8 players averaging at least 16 drives a game. Most volume slashers have some sort of standout physical trait that gives them an advantage over their defender. Maybe it's an explosive first step, remarkable length, tons of power. Reaves is below the league average height, has about an average wingspan, doesn't have a large frame, and isn't particularly explosive. Yet he's been one of the game's most effective downhill scorers for multiple years now. Here's a look at the scoring rate and efficiency of every high volume driver over the past 2 seasons. From left to right is how often each player attempts to score, and top to bottom is how efficient they are. Reaves is attempting to score on about half of his drives, and doing so at a remarkable 65% true shooting, which puts him in a similar sort of class to names like Luka Doncic, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and Victor Wembanyama. Luka's got the size, strength, and change of pace to generate a deep paint touch whenever he wants. Shai's own change of speed in unison with his balance and coordination makes him impossible to stay in front of, while Wemby's may be the freakiest specimen to ever step foot on an NBA court. Like I said earlier, Reaves doesn't have these standout physical traits. Rather, his downhill attack is all about deception and manipulation, which starts as soon as he touches the ball. Almost all of his offense comes out of pick and roll, so creating driving angles is all about the way he uses his handle to weaponize screens. He's got one of the best defenders in the NBA full court pressing him, so he crosses back and forth multiple times while Ayton sets up a screen near the logo. And as soon as there's contact, that's Austin's cue to attack downhill. This sort of zigzagging up the court is effective against pressure because he's a threat to drive in either direction. Grant overplays the side of the screen, so he rejects it with nobody to stop him from walking into a floater. He never stops hunting for that initial advantage. Ellis does a great job of ducking under this screen and cuts off the angle, so Reaves immediately crosses back into a rescreen, forcing Sabonis to step up and leaving Ayton alone in the middle of the floor. He's incredible at using his handle to manipulate screens like this. As he cuts back and forth, there's no way of knowing if he's going to use the screen or not, and as soon as he hangs this left-hand hesitation dribble, Kamara has to make a choice. He chooses wrong, leaving Reaves with an opportunity to get into the defense and create a good shot. Sometimes he'll even manipulate both defenders involved in the action. As he sets this one up with the same hesitation, both McDaniels and Gobert are expecting a screen left, so when Ayton instead sets it right, Reaves is left with a runway to the middle of the floor that collapses the defense and leads to a corner 3. It doesn't matter how many fakes, crossovers, or rescreens it takes. When Reaves is setting up for a ball screen, he's gonna make sure he turns the corner with an advantage, and from there, it's all about making the right decision to get the best shot possible. So going back to the driving game, it's all about reading the big and reacting to what they give him. This time the big is in a high drop, but notice how his body's angled to protect the middle of the floor, meaning that if Reaves quickly attacks baseline, he can win the advantage. It was the exact opposite on the final play in Minnesota. Gobert jumps out but prioritizes the wider driving angle, so Reaves cuts back to the middle where he gets to a game-winning floater. The first thing you'll notice about these downhill attacks is his elite use of pace. If he has room to turn the corner with speed, he'll use that open space to go right at a backpedaling big. That doesn't mean he's rushed though. He starts this one with speed, then hesitates a few times to freeze Gobert while Ayton rolls, which creates an open layup. Here's another one where he starts to turn the corner with speed, then hesitates for just a brief moment at about the 3-point line, which is all it takes for Gobert to put his guard down, resulting in another opportunity at the rim. In addition to pace, he's also a master of using his body. Klingon is one of the biggest players in the NBA, but as soon as Reaves gets his momentum going towards the baseline, he isn't afraid to drop a shoulder into his chest for a little bit of separation. The way he uses his body to create openings really stands out when he slows it down. If he gets a defender on his back, you'll often see him trap them in jail as he works his way to the paint. In these spots, he isn't just a threat to make plays or get to that floater, he'll use his defender's momentum against them by letting them run into him. Then the final piece to his downhill attack out of pick and roll is his handle. He's got the ball on a string and isn't afraid to keep it alive as he navigates space near the basket, so the result is a player who just always seems to turn the corner off of screens and generate deep paint touches. And it sort of goes without saying, but good things happen when a ball handler can get 2 feet in the paint. Over the last 2 seasons, Reaves has shown elite touch around the basket, whether it's a layup, a floater, or a short mid-range jumper. And his crafty use of angles and contact helps him get to the line a ton, so he's a threat to score in a variety of ways. Then he pairs those pressure points with strong passing, so it's in a defense's best interest to keep him as far away from the basket as possible. That's why most coverages against him start with the big jumping up near or at the level of the screen and prioritizing the drive first. And this is where he's able to showcase his vast skill set as a playmaker for others. The best pass in his arsenal is this shovel from left to right to his big in the short roll. The timing and placement are almost always perfect, which pairs beautifully with a guy like Ayton who thrives in those situations. When the shovel isn't there, he's got counters. He's looking for it here, but the big puts a hand in the lane, so he pulls back and goes over the top, creating that same advantage for Ayton to attack. This time the shovel isn't there because this help defender sinks to the nail, and that's when Reaves shifts his focus to the low man. When he doesn't drop, that's his cue to throw a lob, although Hayes isn't able to convert. In the event that the nail defender plays the shovel and the low man drops to take away the lob, the next read is a skip pass across the body to the opposite corner. That's one of the most difficult passes you can make, and I love that Reaves is willing to take that risk. The ability to make a bunch of different deliveries blends with his use of pace. Notice how he uses his live dribble to beat the hedge, then as soon as Luka gets open up top, he finds him for a catch and shoot 3. Here's one where Gobert jumps all the way out, and instead of getting rid of the ball, Reaves keeps his dribble to hunt for a wide driving angle. With Ayton rolling, Randall has to tag from the weak side, and I do think the best playmakers in the world make the skip pass to Rui right here, but Austin's still able to get it there in time, even if it is a touch later than the ideal read. For the most part, he's quick to recognize an advantage and get off the ball. When Sabonis traps him, LaVine is then forced into a 2-on-1 situation, and by kicking it to Smart for an extra pass, the entire defense is compromised. However, there are certain situations where you can see the difference between him and a tier 1 playmaker like Luka. He does a great job of beating the trap, but misses Ayton in the middle of the floor, and the offense resets without an advantage. Sometimes he'll do everything right, then just miss the exclamation point. He uses his dribble to pull the big away from the middle of the floor, and when the low man drops, Smart is left on an island. That's an extremely difficult pass, and it looks like Reaves might attempt it only to reset up top. Even though he fails to capitalize on some of the highest value reads, he almost always makes the next best decision. At this frame right here, it might look like the skip to Rui is the home run pass. However, you'll notice that as Reaves looks down connect, Conley has already started on a closeout. And I think the best playmakers on the planet actually find a way to get this ball to Ayton for a dunk. Like I said though, he makes the next best decision, and the Lakers still end up with a quality shot. All that's to say, he's got the process of an elite pick and roll ball handler. He knows how to manipulate screens, pressure defenses, and find the cracks. The question is, how sustainable is his scoring out of these actions? He's been an above average pick and roll scorer for his entire career, but as of right now, his efficiency is a bit of an outlier even historically. It's rare to see elite ball handlers get up to 1.15, let alone 1.2 points per possession. So to answer how sustainable it is, we have to actually look at where he's scoring from. Most of his damage is done in the short mid-range. He lives in that space 5 to 10 feet out from the basket with short jumpers and floaters. And to start this season, he's been noticeably more accurate than the past few years, but not to the point where I'd call it a complete outlier. I think it's reasonable to expect some regression, but between the way he gets to his spots and his touch, I think he's clearly one of the best short mid-range scorers in the league. His next major pressure point is the free throw line. This is the part of his game that annoys people, but the reality is he's a genius when it comes to baiting defenders into fouls. I already talked about the momentum fouls, where he'll get around a defender, pause, and make them run into him. That's one of the many tricks up his sleeve. If a defender tries to stay attached to him over the top of a screen by grabbing him, he'll sell the contact. If he's setting up an attack and his defender gets a little too handsy, he'll gather up through the arm, which is an instant whistle. And no matter what the situation is, he's always so quick to recognize and exploit these opportunities, earning him tons of trips to the line. This year, he's near the top of the league, attempting almost 10 free throws every 75 possessions. And while that's a lot higher than previous seasons, to me, this is simply a usage stat. Anytime he's asked to pick up a bigger offensive load, he's gonna draw more fouls, which is why there's such a strong correlation between the two numbers. If his usage tapers off with more minutes next to Luka or LeBron's return, his free throw attempts will follow suit, as will his overall scoring production. After the short mid-range game and crafty foul drawing, the third and final major pressure point is the three-point line. He's a very good pull-up three-point shooter who can get to these shots in a variety of ways, whether that's in isolation or when working off of screens. By nature of having the ball in his hands more to start the season, his attempts are up to a career-high 4.5 per game, and for the most part, his accuracy on these shots has been relatively normal. Sure, 39% could be considered hot shooting, but it's far from an outlier, and there's a chance that the increased volume has him in more of a rhythm. Similar to the free throws though, if this production as a pull-up jump shooter is reliant on higher usage, that brings up a slight issue with Austin's game, or more so his fit with the Lakers long term. It's not that Reaves can't play without the ball. He's a reliable shooter who makes quick decisions off the catch, both with drives and extra passes. And he's a pretty active mover who knows how to read defenses and counter with timely cuts. Like I said though, his main 3 pressure points as a scorer are all things he gets to with the ball in his hands. That's reflected in the numbers. Since the beginning of last season, he's played over 750 minutes without either one of Luka or LeBron, and during that time, he's put up all-star caliber production, stuffing the stat sheet efficiently while leading the Lakers to a scorching hot offense. And in the 1600 minutes he's played with either one of Luka or LeBron on the court, he's scoring about 10 less points on similar efficiency while playmaking less, and interestingly enough, the team's offense has actually been worse. That's not to say the Lakers would be better off trading everyone and just building around Reaves. Just that there's a clear signal of him having what it takes to run the show, and that becomes even more clear when you also take D'Lo out of these lineups. With Reaves as a lone perimeter creator in the past 2 seasons, he's put up about 31 points and 9 assists every 75 possessions on that same sort of efficiency, while leading the Lakers to an efficient 120 offensive rating. These numbers are important because this is pretty close to the exact player we've seen through 7 games this season, and the level he'll likely regress to once some of those shooting numbers come closer to his typical average. So to answer the question of whether or not what Reaves is doing right now is sustainable, well, it all comes down to whether or not he has the same opportunity. This statistical signal reminds me a ton of Brunson with the Mavs or even Harden with the Thunder. You have an incredibly skilled on-ball creator who's playing behind 1 or 2 superstars and is only enabled to run the offense with bench units or when those guys miss time. Yet whenever they're in lineups or games as a primary ball handler, they continue to prove that they're more than capable of running their own offense. Reaves has some limitations athletically that prevent him from being a world-class isolation scorer in the way those two are, but he's a pick-and-roll maestro who does a ton of offensive engine-esque things, such as the way he controls pace and how he's quick to recognize mismatches or advantages. In my opinion, he's clearly an all-star level offensive player and might even be pushing into All-NBA territory, which is where the Lakers could run into some issues. Assuming he declines his player option, he's set to become an unrestricted free agent next offseason. And I can almost guarantee that there are teams out there willing to pay $40 or $50 million for this caliber of talent. So all that's to say, the Lakers front office is going to have to get deep in their bag if they want to keep Austin Reaves in Los Angeles.